My name is Fawad Abdul Kader. I'm the country manager for Paymob. My role, of course, in Paymob was firstly to set up the organization in Pakistan, and now it's mainly about creating a sustainable growth, where we digitize the payments in the market through different channels, including e-commerce payments, retail payments, SMEs, micro SMEs through our different product suite that we have. So the market over years has been struggling to convert cash into digital. That's the basic struggle that we have. The fight is not between the fintechs or the banks. It's about converting cash into digital, right? So I think the market now is going into the right direction, because over the last decade or so, while we were more focused on the issuance part of digitization, acquiring was being neglected. And creating acceptance networks across tier 2, tier 3 cities was a major challenge, because mostly the markets were flooded with acceptance networks in the tier 1 cities, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. That was the focus area. Now, with new players coming in, with new technologies coming in, there has been a lot of focus on going not only digitizing the micro and the SMEs in the tier 1 cities, but also going into tier 2, tier 3 cities and digitizing the acceptance networks there. So I think the first and the foremost is to increase the acceptance network, right? From whatever 35,000, 40,000 merchants that were digitized, and everybody who came in was deploying acceptance networks on the same merchants. To increase that pie to 100,000, 500,000, and then going beyond that to the SME market. So I think that was one. The second was the product suite. So the product was very vanilla. So it was mainly card payments that were being pushed to all of these with issuance not that high, right? But with issuance focused in the last 10 years, now since issuance has gone up, there is acceptability of card payments in the market. So the product had to evolve as well. And when we talk to merchants now, when we talk to merchants for their digitization, they're not just looking for a payment solution. They're looking for much more than that. They want their inventory to be digitized. They want their reconciliations to be digitized. They want visibility on those transactions. They want value-added services which could be added on top to give them additional revenue lines. So I think a lot of focus now is also on the increase on the product suite. So one is the increase in the acceptance network, and then creating acceptance products around the merchant needs, which can actually create a behavior for them and create more value for them, is the answer to the conversion from cash to digital. Yeah, so like I said, the digitization of a merchant is not just about offering him a product, right? So if you go and tell him that you start accepting payments digitally, the first question is that why should I pay another company to accept payments when I can accept cash, right? So the perception is very clear. The cash is free and you are charging me whatever a percentage of my revenue as a charge to digitize that payment, right? So until unless you're able to convince the merchant of the value that is created for him, and the value will be only created once there are only two values for a merchant. Once you can convince him that you can push more customers to him, and second, the customer's ticket size would also increase, right? So the idea is to provide him with value adds which can do these two things. Bring in more customers, that means create more SKUs for him, even if they are in digital in nature. And then secondly, for instance, I'll share an example. Sorry, the answer is a little longer, but I'll share an example that where I buy my vegetables, right? This guy is now accepting digital payments, right? And I asked him why. So his answer was that whenever somebody walks into my shop, and since the prices and the inflation has gone up, people don't realize and they don't carry as much cash with them. There were two behaviors of the consumer. One, they would leave a few things and just carry the amount that they had, or they would go out to the ATM and never return back, right? Because they might have gotten a merchant which was closer, or a hawker which was closer to the ATM from which they bought again. So they never came back. So for him, it was very important that the customer that has walked in and what he wanted to buy, he can sell him there and then. And for that, he has started to accept digital payments. Now, this is the behavior that the merchants are understanding now. It is very important to educate the merchant. So one thing that we as an industry also have done wrong is going after hard selling, right? Instead of telling these very practical sort of advantages to the merchants, which would entice them to adopt, rather than thinking of them that we are there to take a chunk of their revenue. So there are two or three things, two or three areas that need to improve, right? I would just touch upon the policy side as well, because I think one thing that everybody is scared of is policy, because they are not sure when they digitize and when they become documented, because that's part of the digitization process, being documented, right? Once they become documented, the information that's being captured for these transactions, what's done with it, right? So I think with data privacy with laws, with that comfort to the merchants, which can be given in very short terms, of what can be done with this data and what cannot be done with this data, is one thing that's, I think, very important for the industry overall. But that's on the policy side. On the companies that are trying to do it, for them, it's mainly about improving, firstly, the service levels, right? The merchant, frankly speaking, settlement problem is also there, but the first concern for him is that if a customer charges his cards and there's some issue due to which the amount gets deducted and is not reversed back, it takes days before the amount is reverted back. In the current economic situation where everybody is trying to save every buck that he has, it is like really painful if 10,000 or 20,000 out of your salary, which is not that high, is just blocked due to a issue that happened on the technical side. So cash, you are sure, you give the cash and you get the things. The first thing is the dispute resolution and the complaint management has to be amicable. It cannot ask the customer to wait. That's the first thing. Second, of course, the settlement timelines, because that comes from the merchant side. Because firstly, the customer should be willing to pay, and the customer would be willing to pay when he's absolutely sure that his payment would not get blocked somewhere. The second is the merchant, of course. The merchant the liquidity for him is an issue. So the settlement timelines, frankly speaking, on POS, the settlement happens the next day, so it's not that bad. On e-commerce, of course, it takes 48 or 72 hours, which the merchants do not want. But it's better than cash, because when they deliver on cash, the liquidity cycle is more than 7 days. In most cases, it's 15 and 30 days, right? So even there, it's about educating the merchant about the cost that he's bearing because of that turnaround on cash timelines, right? So I think it's one thing is improving on the operational side. The second is the awareness. That is very critical, because you have to break a lot of myths. Like, for instance, cash is cheaper and digital is more expensive for the merchant, right? So you have to create those awareness, and I think the industry as a whole has to come together in order to have those messages to the merchants and to the businesses, which would entice them to come here. So I think these two things would be key. Business model will be decided based on the company's positioning itself, right? For instance, if I talk about Paymob is a payments company, right? We don't lend, we don't keep deposits, we don't provide any other services, right? But we partner with our different entities, and we create collaborations with them. So for us, the business model is around the MDR, right? And when I say that, of course, that business model is extended through our partners into different, like for instance, lending, but that's where we are promoting lending for our merchants. And the idea is to grow our merchants so that their payments grow, and then we get. So for us, it's about the MDR, but the value creation around the peripheries for the loan and everything is more for the growth of the merchant. And as the merchant grows, our revenue lines grow. So that's how we look at the business model. Yeah, so of course, so it is imperative. I would say that for the economy, for on a larger sense, to digitize itself, and it's basically because you want the entire economic cycle to happen, right? So if whenever cash is out there and it's being invested into cash bonds or cash itself, and it's kept in that way, it's not part of the economic cycle anymore, right? So it's out of the economic system. And as you digitize it and document it, then it starts to roll. I'm not saying the entire cash is out there. It is also creating economic activity, but a lot of it cannot be traced out what economic activities it is creating. So documenting it and making sure that it comes through a system which can be traced and tracked, and the value it is creating for the economy can be quantified is key to basically identify the areas where you need to put in more investments, put in more liquidity, put in more efforts in the market. So absolutely. So digitization is, I think, imperative for identifying these areas. Absolutely. So for us, the SME and the micro segment has been the main focus. Not only in Pakistan, in Egypt, and wherever we are going, it is an effort. It is a very, very clear direction for us to go into that direction. I'll tell you why. So you're absolutely right that you'd see our machines on the larger merchants as well, and that's in order to make sure that we create that revenue lines for us to be sustainable in the long run, right? But in the long run, till we achieve that point, we would be deploying on the enterprise level merchants as well. But in the long run, what we believe, the M and SMEs are the segment that will give us the larger volumes, because as far as each merchant is concerned, maybe the gross monthly value that they're producing is not that high, but accumulative is much higher than the enterprise levels, and we all know that, right? It's anywhere, it's like 70 to 80% of your economy. So the idea is to digitize and bring that into the challenge has been that when you go into these segments, there are two major challenges: the investment that you have to make to digitize them, and for that you have to be a little more product oriented in order to make sure you're able to provide them products which do not cost as high. That means you can convert from POS to soft POS and yet convert and them to digital payments, right? So to bring your cost down on the products that you're giving to them, but in order to capture them, provide them services that are needed by them, right? So yes, we have a special focus on that, and we are focused in Pakistan also. A lot of merchants that we have onboarded are first time merchants, and we boast this, that out of the merchant base that we have, around 200,000 across the MENAP region, 90% of those merchants are first time merchants, right? So 10% are merchants which are large, yes, but there would be larger volumes of merchants which would be first time merchants, or would lie in the M and SME category. There's too many problems for one entity to handle, right? So, and when I say, when we talk about stakeholders, the government of Pakistan is a stakeholder. The regulator is a stakeholder. So you have to work on policies on the government levels, you have to work on regulations on the regulatory levels, you have to work the banks, fintechs, and even the market is a stakeholder, right? So everybody has to work to digitize. I was doing some consulting even for digitizing payments on the government sector, and the biggest challenge there was digitizing their existing processes, right? So digitization of payments comes as a consequence of the digitization of the processes, or whatever is being done in an organization by itself as well, right? So it's a collective effort from each stakeholder, where the merchants and the businesses also have to play a role, where they have to be open to digitization. But there's policy level, regulatory level, and then the stakeholders who are trying to digitize payments, their efforts on the product side, on the pricing, on the settlement, operational efficiencies, all of this has to work together in order for digitization to happen. If even one of these do not come in and play their role, this would take much longer than it needs to. I wouldn't say it would not happen, it would take much longer than it needs to. Okay, so people will collaborate on wanting to change what the status quo and what's happening today, but it is going to take a lot of time. You have to have a catalyst, right? The challenge with, even with an Apex organization coming in and taking control and trying to drive it, what sort of mandate that organization has. We have had forums which were created even from on the government side, but with the changes, everything sort of fizzles out, right? Then there is the regulator who's playing its role, but again, they cannot be the driver of this. They can only create an environment which enables the market. So I think it has to be from the private sector. It has to be either a consortium from the private sector, or a forum which is created, which actually is also empowered by the regulators and the government sectors to drive this. I think that should answer that. Yeah, so this is one question that I've been answering for a while now, and look, we're going through tough times. Let me be very clear on this, right? And a lot of people, when they ask this question, have a different sort of an answer that they're expecting. What I believe is that yes, even with these tough times that we have, whether it's economical, whether it's regarding the challenges that we have in the market, I believe that we are headed in the right direction. It's just about, my concern is only about the speed in which we are headed, right? I think with more focused approach, this can be expedited further. But I believe in the next 2-3 years, you'll see, because the understanding with each stakeholder is very clear that we have to go on to this route. So that's one good thing that has happened in the last 3-4 years, that we are all aligned on where we have to take this, right? Yes, there are challenges that we are facing, and those challenges might push us back a little, and then we again push ahead and we adopt to the changes in the economy, for that matter, or whatever the situations are. We do have a roadmap now, right? So whether it happens in 2 3 years or whether it takes us 5 years is only about how the market forces will come together in order to resolve this problem. So it's only about the matter of time now. It's because the products are being designed, the players are investing, their market is being educated, the market understands. This is probably the best time for us to work because the market is now demanding. This is the first time the market has started to demand that we need this to digitize ourselves, right? So I think we are headed in the right direction. It's just about expediting it. So whether we reach there in 2 3 years or whether we reach there in 5 years is something that depends on how collaborative efforts are done.